Hey, people of the places. Let's talk about why early access games always fail, or at least why it looks like they fail. The truth is, as always, more complicated than it first appears. I'm making this video because of a comment I got on my channel. It reads, the Steam charts tell the final truth. About 98% of players have left. Why? That's what I want to know as someone who hasn't played either game. This comment was in relation to a game called Rogue Core. The game started with 42,000 players, and in only 2 months it dropped down to 1,000. So what causes this steep drop off? Believe it or not, this is actually very normal for an early access title. Early access games generally lose over 90% of their players within the first 3 months, and this is due to a combination of reasons which most of you have already guessed at least partly. What you probably don't realize is that fully finished games generally lose around 70% of their player base in that same 3 month period. The number is a little lower for live service and replayable games, and a lot higher for games that have a set story or a campaign, single player games, stuff like that. So let's go through a couple of these games that I have here, especially so I can show you that this is not unique to Rogue Core. Hades 2, which has overwhelmingly positive reviews on Steam, released with 100,000 players. In only 2 months, it had dropped down to less than 6% of that number at just under 7,000. And apart from some hotspots here and there where the updates came out, it remained at a relatively low player count until its full release, which saw just slightly higher than its early access release, with 112,000 players. But again, in only a 6 month period, it's dropped down to just about 10% of that player count. But what about a game like Valheim? This is an exploration crafting game, and it released very successfully, 500,000 players. It took just a little longer to hit its low point, but after 4 months, they only had 33,000 players, 6% of their original player count. And again, other than the hotspots around an update, it remains pretty close to that number for the entire 5 years of development going forward. Their full release is about to happen, and I suspect they won't reach that 500,000 player count that they had on their early access release. This is a game that people could spend hundreds of hours playing. I personally have spent hundreds of hours playing it. And still, it only has 6% of that original player count on release. Another game with overwhelmingly positive reviews that has a similar graph is Resident Evil Requiem. It released in February, and by April, it had just about 3% of its original player count. Once you finish the story and the single player content, there's not much else to do, which is why the number has been steadily dwindling for the last several months. And that is absolutely expected. Similar graphs follow for other types of games. Live service games manage to retain a slightly larger percentage, just over 10% for the most part. Even a game like Slay the Spire 2 lost 85% of its player base, and the fans of this game are borderline masochistic. They could do everything wrong and people would still play it. Realistically, when you're looking at gameplay charts, seeing a huge amount of people leaving a game is not that uncommon. But that's not the only metric we're measuring the success of a game by. Why are the reviews so bad? How about Slay the Spire 2? This one's got 57% positive reviews. Why is it so bad, and yet so many people are still playing it? It's insane. Or at least it would be if it was a fully released title. But it's not. It is not a fully released title, and that is the difference. We have to remember the people reviewing this game, it's a self-selecting group. Generally, on Steam, when you leave a review of a game, you're leaving that review for other players. You're saying, okay, this is what I like, this is what I dislike, this is whether or not you should get it. The purpose of your review changes when you leave a review on an early access title. Most of the time, with a fully released game, you leave a positive review for other people so they know whether or not they should get the game, whether or not they'll enjoy it. But on an early access title, you leave a negative review for the developers. You want them to see it. The majority of the reviews here aren't necessarily an honest review of the game, but instead are a call to action, asking the developers to do something. Posting a positive review is feedback, but it's not criticism. If you want to inspire change in the game you're playing, you leave a negative review. This is the reason you see early access games constantly failing. The truth is, the reviews on an early access game shouldn't be judged the same way as a fully released title, and the player count drop off after only a few months is completely normal even for fully released AAA studios. And that is why early access games always fail. Thanks for watching, and take care.